Chag Sameach. Chag Sukkot Sameach. Happy Sukkot. We are in the final days of Sukkot. So, anybody coming over to you over the holiday and say, hey, are you Jewish? How did you feel when that happened? Well, most probably they were trying to inspire you to do this mitzvah. The lulav and esrog. It's my new shirt. My Sukkot shirt. Share the love, share the lulav, which my wife made for me. Good Yontif. So, are you Jewish? I asked that question together with my wife and kids and thousands of other Chabadniks, maybe 1,000 times, if not more, over this holiday. And it actually sparked interesting conversation. Right in front of our home, 45 West 86th Street, we have a sukkah on our porch. You're welcome to go make the bracha and the lulav, to shake the lulav and the esrog there if you haven't yet, or today. And there's also cookies. You can make a blessing. Borei minim mizonot. But just regarding the question, are you Jewish? There's a debate within the Chabad world also, discussion, whether you approach someone and say, are you Jewish? Or do you approach someone with a softer question, which I did very often also, this Yom Tov, which I would ask somebody, have you made a bracha yet on the lulav and etrog? Did you bless yet? Or would you like to bless? And I did it right here on the reservoir over here in Central Park, where I walked counter traffic, holding my lulav and esrog, pointing to it, to all the runners and saying, hey, stop for the lulav, stop for the lulav. It's a lot of fun, because this is really my home away from home. I know this place. I'm here every day almost. Anyway, so just real very quickly about, are you Jewish? Most people, if they're not Jewish, they respond, no, I'm sorry, or a lot of, maybe 10 or 15 of them said, no, but I wish I was. And all very respectful. It's the Jewish people who didn't like the question, not the non-Jewish people. Which I wonder why. I don't know why. I have an idea, but I'd rather not say it. But one interesting situation, there was a Jewish woman and a non-Jewish woman. They were sitting at an outdoor restaurant, so I approached them, would you like to make the bracha? And the Jewish woman was very excited to do it. And I wasn't sure about the next one, so I asked her, would you like to do it? And she said, and both of them said together, like she said, I'm not Jewish, and the other lady said, she's not Jewish. And then the non-Jewish woman said, you know, you don't have to be Jewish to be Jewish. I thought that was one of the most beautiful lines I've heard. You don't have to be Jewish to be Jewish. I know it's a bit of a tongue twister, but it was beautiful at the time. And I think that sentiment was shared a lot over this holiday. And the Jewish people have to figure out if they're okay at being asked, are you Jewish or not? Anyway, that was that. Now let's get to the Dvar Torah. So the question is, we're all building Sukkot and living in a Sukkah and staying in a Sukkah for 7 days, etc. Is it more important, or what would you choose, to have a Sukkah that is the absolute highest standard of kosher, or possibly compromise on your Sukkah and help another Jew in some form? And the question is really a broader question about religious priorities. Is it more important for a Jew to excel and beautify his or her mitzvah, whichever it may be, or perhaps to compromise on the beautification of a mitzvah for the sake of helping another Jew? And that's the question that we're going to answer today, according to the Rebbe's explanation of a story with the Baal Shem Tov. So the Baal Shem Tov, the Rebbe told this story in 1967 almost exactly 1 month before I was born. About a month less a week before I was born in 1967. And he said that the Baal Shem Tov once built a sukkah that was formed with every possible halachic loophole there is in the Jewish world. You know, many mitzvot have different criteria that they need to be, you know, this, whatever, dimension, measurement, height. And the sukkah has its criteria, its dimensions that it must have. And then what the walls should be made out of, what the schach, the covering should be made out of, etc., etc. And there are many, many exceptions to the rule when it comes to the sukkah. You can make a sukkah in a million different ways that's not at the highest standard, but it's still kosher for use. So one year, the Baal Shem Tov made a sukkah that included every known halachic loophole. And he was actually confronted by the local rabbis who were not yet his Hasidim, and the scholars. They converged on his sukkah, and it was still before Sukkot. And they showed him piece by piece. They said, look, this is not kosher, that's not kosher, this is not kosher. And the Baal Shem Tov responded to each of their halachic inquiries appropriately, but they insisted. And these were the leaders of the generation that were the non-Hasidic movement, who came to kind of ridicule the Baal Shem Tov and prove him wrong, as was their custom. So the Baal Shem Tov didn't win their arguments, or they didn't overcome their rejections and objections. But what he did was, while they were all standing there in the sukkah, he put his hand on his forehead like this for a moment, and then takes his hand off his forehead, and in his hand there's a scroll, a parchment scroll. They're of course startled and shocked, but they open it up, and the scroll says, Sukkot Baal Shem Tov Kishera. The sukkah of Rabbi Yisrael, his name was Kishera, is kosher. And it was signed Malach Matat Sar Hapnim, the angel whose name was Matat, who was the minister of internal affairs of the heavens. So the archangel testified that the Baal Shem Tov sukkah was kosher. When they saw that, they fled to find other sukkahs to talk about, and they left the Baal Shem Tov alone. That's the story. The story the Rebbe related, and the story is related by the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, who's known by his work, the Degel Machane Ephraim, and he actually wrote that he had that scroll for 2 years after the story happened, and after the Baal Shem Tov passed away, he had that scroll, and every time a sick person would come to ask him for a blessing, he would take the scroll and give it to him to hold, or put it under his pillow or his head, and the person would be cured. And for 2 years, Chag Sameach, for 2 years, no one ever died in that area, in that city, in his town, until one day the scroll disappeared, and he realized that people are supposed to die at certain times. Okay, so that's the story. Now the Rebbe talks about this and asks the questions, and he asks maybe 10 questions about the story. Some of them, I'm not going through all of them. Some of them are the Baal Shem Tov, first of all, was a brilliant scholar, and he was able to overcome the arguments of these people. Why didn't he? That's question number one. Another question is, we know that the Torah is not in heaven. The Torah is on earth. So an angel is not able to paskin, to give a halachic ruling of whether or not something is kosher. It needs to be reviewed and agreed upon by the rabbis below. So how would it even help that the angel, the Baal Shem Tov, call down this angel from above, etc.? The main question that we're going to address is that the Rebbe asks, is the Baal Shem Tov was the founder of the Hasidic movement, and he was known, one of his main inspirations and influences was to inspire the Jewish people to observe the mitzvot in what we call lifnim mishurat hadin, beyond the letter of the law, in the best possible way. If the law dictates something small, do something more, do it better, bigger and better. How is it that the Baal Shem Tov himself put up a sukkah that was so questionable that all the rabbis of his area objected to it and they questioned it? As says the Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov is teaching us something, a deep lesson about our roles as Jewish people and especially Jewish leaders. And the Rebbe explained, if you look in the Midrash about the holiday of Sukkot, there are lots of various angles that the Midrash talks about explaining Sukkot. One of them is as follows. The Torah verse that talks about taking the 4 kinds on Sukkot is Ulakachtem lachem bayom harishon pre-Eitz Hadar, and you should take for yourself on the first day. On the first day. And the Talmud asks this question, the Midrash asks this question, what is this first day that we're talking about? Is it? And he explains, Rishon lecheshbon avonot. It's the first day to the calculations of sin. It's the first day where we, after the high holy days, the awesome holy days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where we all are standing in awe before God, and we're united before God in our commitment, and everyone has cleaned their slate. No one sinned. Everyone is clean as a whistle on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. After that, what happens after Yom Kippur? So after Yom Kippur, the first few days, everybody's busy building their sukkah, finding a lulav, an etrog that's kosher. So people are occupied in mitzvot. And then, when's the first day that they can actually relax from this spiritual intensity? That's the first day of Sukkot. The first day of Sukkot, says the Midrash, it's Rishon lecheshbon avonot. It's the first day when people can actually relax and then be influenced by the influences of the world, by the corruption of the world, by the spiritual pollution of the world. And says the Midrash that that's why right after the high holy days we have the sukkah, the mitzvah to enter a sukkah, which is a closed space, a holy space representing God's protection of us. That we should be protected from the outside undesirable, unholy elements. So we go into a sukkah, we enclose ourselves in God's hug, and we're protected. Says the Rebbe now that the Baal Shem Tov, why would the Baal Shem Tov lower his standard and compromise to make such a just barely kosher sukkah? Says the Rebbe, the reason is because the Baal Shem Tov knew that there are many people in the world at the time who were making sukkahs, who were building sukkahs that were not so kosher, that were just barely kosher, that weren't at the highest standards. And along with that, said the Rebbe, the sukkah is our protection. It's our spiritual protection. It's got borders, it's got 4 walls, and it's got a rooftop. And it protects us from going where we shouldn't go, being where we shouldn't be, and from all directions, and thinking what we shouldn't think, etc. Said the Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov knew that there are Jews whose protection is not necessarily the most perfect protection. So both the physical sukkah and the spiritual sukkah is not necessarily the highest standard. And the Baal Shem Tov said, I'm going to build a sukkah that includes every single Jew, that is aligned with the lowest level sukkah out there and the lowest level person out there in their protection area. And I'm going to make that sukkah, I'm going to make a bracha and dwell in that sukkah, and thus elevate all the different sukkot of the world and all the different people of the world who have the minimal protection in their midst. And I'm going to elevate them, because in God, in heaven, they would definitely accept the Baal Shem Tov sukkah. And if they accept the Baal Shem Tov sukkah made at the lowest standard, they have to accept everyone else's. So the Baal Shem Tov referred to the verse, Kol Yisrael ru'in leishev b'sukkah achas. Actually, the Rebbe said this. Kol Yisrael ru'in leishev b'sukkah achas. All Jews are fit to sit in one sukkah. Everyone is welcome to the sukkah of the Baal Shem Tov and to the Hasidic way that he taught, in which everyone is welcome, no matter where, when, or who. And that was the reason why the Baal Shem Tov, Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, made such a low quality sukkah. Finally, I get made. Finally, I'll share one more heartwarming story that happened to me on Thursday, where in Mount Sinai Hospital, where a fellow shliach reached out to me from elsewhere, a different state, and he said, I have a friend who's unfortunately in the last few either hours or days of his life in Mount Sinai Hospital, and the family wants you to come make the bracha of lulav and esrog with him, to bench lulav. So I went to Mount Sinai. It was 11 a.m. on Thursday, and I found the person. We made the bracha together. He was, Baruch Hashem, still talking, and hopefully he'll have a complete speedy recovery. May this talk be in his merit. And after that, at 11 a.m., I thought to myself, oh, there must be more Jews here in Mount Sinai, right? More. So I reached out to the local Bikur Cholim of Manhattan, and they gave me some names. I reached out to the other Chabad centers nearby. They gave me some names. Then I thought to myself, there must be some more Jews here. And I went from the top floor, from 11 down to the bottom. To every station, there's Mount Sinai wings that have west, center, and east. Now to each of those stations, to the nurses' stations, and asked the receptionist, who, bar none, were not Jewish. None of them were Jewish. And you know, to get into Mount Sinai Hospital, you need to get screened, you need to get tested for fever, for COVID, and they're pretty serious. So what I found overwhelmingly heartwarming was that I thought to myself, oh, you know, I'm going to try. I'll go there's these non-Jewish receptionists saying, hey, can I help you? What are you here for on my floor? Who are you coming to visit? And I said to every one of them, same words. I said, today's a Jewish holiday. Here's the lulav and the esrog. It's a Jewish ritual. I'd like to do it with the Jewish staff. Can you please guide me to the Jewish staff? What do you think the response would be? I thought it would be different. I can tell you that much. Every single floor at Mount Sinai Hospital, every single receptionist, and they were all, realistically speaking, they were all African Americans, every one of them. Male and female, split in the middle, some male, some female. Every one of them picked up the radio right then and there in front of me and said, Jewish staff, there's a rabbi here who wants to make a blessing with you. Come to the front desk. Or, Rivka, come to the front desk. There's a rabbi here who wants to talk to you. Devora, come to the front desk. And then they got up and they went from room to room in the center nurses station, and they found the Jewish staff. And we met and we blessed with the Jewish staff. While with the Jewish staff, Jewish nurses and doctors, they showed me to the patients that they were attending. They showed me the Jewish patients. And from 11 a.m. to 3 something p.m. I just went down from floor to floor to floor, and inspired by the spiritual generosity of the non-Jewish people who guided me, who let me in the door, to whom I'm very grateful. And actually the very first mitzvah, exactly the very first female receptionist who connected me with the Jewish nurse who brought me to the Jewish patient, the very first Jewish patient, was actually a neighbor of mine from 40 years ago. Well, I haven't seen for 40 years. We were neighbors when we used to live in Crown Heights. Anyway, that's my story for today. I know it's a little long, but I hope it's inspiring and you enjoy it. And everybody's welcome. Chag Sameach. Everybody's welcome to join. Come to our front porch, 45 West 86th Street, or send your friends to make a bracha on in the sukkah and on the lulav and esrog. Take care. All the best. Be well. And tomorrow night is Shmini Atzeret, and then it's Simchas Torah. Dance with the Torah wherever you are, or come to Chabad and join us. Take care. God bless you.